So good morning everyone, welcome to our webinar this morning on alumni to student group mentoring. My name is Sarah Sherman, I work for the Bloomsbury Learning Environment, and it's my pleasure to invite you all here today to hear from my colleague Anna Foss, who works at LSHTM, who's going to share with you her experiences and the project that she has installed in allowing alumni to mentor current students. So this is what the plan is for the morning. We are recording today's session, so just in case you're not comfortable with your voice being recorded or your chat being retained, because it will be, I just wanted to let you know. The recording will be posted onto the BLE website, hopefully by the end of this week, along with all materials and presentations that we're going to be showing today. So all of the resources will be available to everyone. For those of you who have registered and have joined us today, I will also email you, so you'll have a direct link to all those materials. So during the session, please make sure that you keep your microphone muted. I will do the same. I'm in an open plan office today, so as soon as I stop talking, I will mute my microphone. That will just reduce sound issues. If you have any questions as Anna is talking during her presentation, feel free to write those down into the chat, but Anna won't be looking at those until right at the end. But if anything comes to you, you don't want to forget your question, then feel free to jot those down in the chat box. So I think that's probably it from now. If you have any questions during the session, feel free to use the chat, because I will be looking at that and making sure you're all okay. But I'm going to hand over to Anna. You can see her very impressive credentials there, and I'll leave you to it.
Thanks, Sarah. So, yes, hopefully transfer the slides okay. So yeah, thanks everyone for coming, and yeah, I'm very excited about this mentorship scheme, as some of you know already. It's been lovely working with the alumni and the students, and yeah, so I'm just hopeful that people might be keen to try this in their own context, or explore with me whether things can be adapted or how it might work across other modules, MSCs, or at other institutions as well. So in terms of how we've kind of done this so far, the alumni have been supporting students on the distance learning public health MSc at LSHTM, and that's an optional. The project module organisers are the staff who sort of manage the module and the links between the supervisors and the students, because each student has like one-to-one supervisor. And I'm one of the project module organisers for this particular module. So it's often the first time that our students have done any kind of research, and they might have limited local support. So something that they'd asked for was whether they could be linked up to previously successful students, and that was quite hard to try and sort out. But then we were lucky enough to get an award from the Centre of Distance Education of the University of London Worldwide. So because we got that, we launched the scheme in July of last year. We managed to recruit 9 mentors of the pool of alumni who'd finished previously as volunteers to act as a group, collectively supporting the new intake of students. There was about 77 then, and the aim was to really enhance the student learning experience, including like sort of participation and just sort of support. So we did. We ran it as it's still ongoing, as an educational research study, where we're going to kind of evaluate the scheme as we go along, but also at the end, through like focus group discussions, but also any formative feedback along the way that we adapt the scheme to, very much involving using the students as partners approach, so the mentors and the mentees giving feedback. And I think, although I'm potentially suggesting as we transfer this and roll this out that you don't necessarily run it as an educational research study unless you've got lots of resources and time. But there is the aspect of involving them in the process and getting their feedback and then seeing us respond to their feedback, that I think really helps keep them engaged. So maybe retaining that aspect would be good. We did 4 different types of format for how the alumni support the students, and they're represented by the different icons here. So graduation, we filmed some of them, which was great, you know, to be able to capture their excitement after, you know, they finished their MSc, because the project module comes right at the end. So we did that. We also asked some who couldn't make graduation to record videos remotely, and then edited those together with, you know, the video editing team. That's not something that I have particular skills in. So if that's something you're interested to do, I could talk through that with you. But I also think this mentorship program can run without that. So if you're trying to have a streamlined approach, if you're sort of low on time but wanting to involve alumni, then yeah, I wouldn't say the videos were essential, because they do add a lot of time into it. But it was so nice to have as well. So I don't know, we can discuss. The written contributions, we had somebody who didn't want to be recorded in a video but was happy to write down their experience of being, you know, undertaking an MSc research project. So we had that, and we've also compiled extra things since then based on the third component, which is their interactions in the discussion forums on Moodle. So this was an extra component that I didn't think I could ask of alumni, because I thought, you know, they're busy people, and I can't, you know, have them in the background checking emails and messages and Moodle boards over such a long period of time, because, you know, this was, you know, more than a year. It's like 20-month cycle we're talking here. But they wanted to. They said, when I'd asked them to just join the occasional collaborate session, which is the 4th format there, I said, you know, if, you know, there's about 6 or 7 running throughout the year, can you join these collaborate sessions after you've made the videos, and that'll be enough? And they said, oh no, please, can we do the discussion forums as well? So yeah, I tell you that because I know when I started this, I thought it'd be really hard to recruit alumni mentors, or, you know, that it might be difficult to try and get them to do things voluntarily when they're so busy. But that hasn't been an issue, and we're on our 2nd cohort now, and again, they've been easy to recruit and they've been really engaged. So yeah, so that's some reassurance from me about that. In terms of the role of mentors, we asked them that they, you know, that really they're sort of walking on this journey with the students. They're showing empathy on the ups and downs, because it is a real challenge for them, as we know in research, with all the things that go wrong that they don't necessarily anticipate. We asked them not to give direct advice, so it's very much the mentorship model where you know, the students or the mentees are in the driving seat, and you know, that they're sort of journeying with them, and that they're sharing their experiences. So they're saying things like, you know, I found it helpful when I did this, or I wish I hadn't done that and I'd done something completely different, I'd done this instead. So they're saying that rather than I think you should do whatever, because it's the role of the supervisors and the project module organisers as staff to really be advising and guiding students. And so if the mentors do make a bit of a suggestion, then we ask them to, you know, we make sure they tell the students to check with their supervisor or the PMO. Sorry, I've noted your hand, Alice, so I'll just finish this slide. And then if the other thing is to make their role clear when they're in their communication. So whether they're posting on the Moodle discussion forums, I ask them to sign off as an alumni peer mentor, so it's clear what their role is and they don't get confused as staff or other students. And if they're in a collaborate session like this, sometimes it gives them the option of putting it in brackets in their name. Sometimes it doesn't work so easily, but as long as they make it clear if they're speaking that they're an alumni mentor, or if they're in the chat, again, sort of mentioning it there. And I've talked already about it, just involving them in the process of giving feedback for all this. So was there a question there? Is it Alice?
Yes, thanks. I was just wondering, When we're looking at doing the mentoring program for DL EPH, one of the concerns was about would there be a confusion about the role of mentor for the alumni that kind of crosses into the role of like a tutor, and like, is that something you've come across, and how did you guys deal with that? Do you think that was an issue, or was it very clear that mentors are very separate from a tutor and do something very different, or did people have different expectations?
Yeah. I think it's a really good question, because it is something that, I mean, just talk openly, so myself and the mentors, that is a very tricky one. It's easy for me to say now with this slide, you know, they don't give advice and they do this, but obviously in practice it is a, you know, it is kind of a very loose or murky kind of boundary. And I think because with this, the way we're running this, it's everything's monitored because it's in group format, and so the PMOs, you know, myself, my colleagues, we can see what the mentors are saying or hear what they're saying, and we can step in and clarify if necessary. So if we think they are wading towards advice, if it's not really an issue, then I might just email the mentors outside of the Moodle just to say, oh, I think you're straying a little bit into advice, but it's not really a problem, but, you know, just be careful, and perhaps you could phrase it more like this, or, you know, talk about the difference. I do it as gently as I can, because I also think you've got to balance things a bit with you know, empowering the mentors and sort of letting go. I feel like I have to let go a bit as well, because it's very differently sometimes. I think, oh, I wouldn't quite have said it like that. But of course, the fact that they have a different style and different way of writing is what I think makes the scheme successful, because it's this authenticity that they're bringing, you know. And the next slide, actually, if I move on to that, says a little bit more about this. Sorry, just trying to get back to the slide. Okay, yeah. Because what we do is we sort of step in when we need to in the actual Moodle forum. So if there's anything that someone says that's very inaccurate and that needs a clarification, and I think I can word it in such a way that's not saying, oh, the alumni said something wrong, and blah, 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 I might step in and sort of broadcast that in a bit more of a clarification way. Or if I think it might be something, I might go to the alumni mentor and ask them to post a clarification themselves, or ask them how they want it to handled, yeah. As we might as PMOs as staff. So there's like two of us who work together, and it might be that I say something that the other PMO thinks actually that might confuse the students, and then, you know, she might email me and we work out how we're going to handle it. So it yeah, so we're sensitive to each other, and it's not like we just sort of broadcast to everyone, oh, you've said something completely wrong, why did you say that? So it's just having that mutual respect, I think. And sometimes the mentors will email me first to check their post before putting it up. And I've changed that now with the second cohort going forwards, and in the resources for you, I would recommend that, you know, for their first post, when they post their introductory message about their background and their project and that sort of thing, and their first reply to a student, that they send it to me first, you know, just for, you know, a little bit of guidance on that one. And then I say after that, you know, just let me know if you go ahead, you don't have to check unless they're unsure of something. And, you know, I think mostly I haven't seen any massive problems, I would say, and I think that's the reassurance, because when we started the scheme, that is, you know, there were several staff who were quite concerned about yeah, what might come up. But it's very much like other student posts, you know, they provide peer-to-peer support. So we tell the students to treat the alumni responses very much as other students. So they're students who've gone before them, but be cautious about what they're saying. They're not staff. And then in the same way, if a student posted something that was inaccurate or misleading, we would step in as PMOs. It's just like that. They just happen to be alumni. So, and the alumni like that, because they like that protection, because they were nervous at the start that they might say the wrong thing, you know. So that, you know, in this kind of monitored, protected environment, I think the mentors and the mentees feel sort of supported and protected. And we also make sure the students are aware that the alumni are volunteers, so they are limited in the time. They might phase in and out a bit, so it's not like we have the same expectation. Like as staff, we might say respond within 3 to 5 working days, wherever we don't sort of expect that of alumni. Although I will sometimes send via email, I might prompt them because they like that as well. I mean, these are elements that you need to decide depending on what time you've got available, because it does add a time dimension if you're looking out for things and thinking, oh, which mentor shall I send this to, or what group of mentors, or how much to prompt them, and how much sort of positive feedback. I think that's the other thing that they really value, because of course we're all working at a distance. So if every time they post a message you just sort of say, oh, thank you, that was really helpful in this way, or just keeping in touch with them, that I think that really helps. And then the new thing that's been added, I'll just say about the bottom point about the transparency. Yes, so the other thing with the group model is everything's sort of transparent, so all students can benefit, and that's why we sort of ask for the interactions to be closed within Moodle and Collaborate as well. So we make it explicit that they can't sort of meet up within this role. I mean, obviously they might be on Facebook already with with students, so alumni and students, but we say if they're talking about their role as an alumni mentor for, say, the project module, then their communications need to be contained within Moodle and Collaborate. And then the new point here, just about the confidentiality. So this has come from HR when we were putting together the code of conduct, which is one of the transferable resources that we've got as an example if you want to adapt. Just in the situation where they felt something had been posted online where a student might have been talking about harming themselves or something else, in that unlikely event, but if it was to happen, then who they should phone in such a situation. But again, because it's within Moodle or Collaborate, we as staff anyway, as PMOs, should have seen it and acted on it. But in case an alumni mentor sees it first, then we tell them what to do and also who to email and all the rest of it, so that it's responded to as soon as possible. So sort of moving more on to the sort of findings from what we've seen early on in the mentorship scheme. In terms of the videos, we had, I think, about 25 new students or prospective project students having a look at those videos, and some positive feedback about those. We also we started to run an earlier Collaborate session with students sort of thinking about undertaking an MSc project before they actually register, and that was very popular. It's the most popular we've ever had, and I would say it's quite hard for us to compare year on year, because we've now, as a result of this, we've changed how we run our Collaborates. Instead of offering different time slots, we have one where everyone comes together, so it's much more interactive and stimulating, and we have this extra sort of earlier one. But I would say overall my sense is that the Collaborate sessions are much more enjoyable for me. It's not sort of me just talking like I am now, but it's much more interactive. And it's great to have the alumni step in and share their experiences. And we're analysing, as part of the research, we're analysing those Collaborate sessions as well. Yes, in terms of our research paper that will come out of it. And then on this slide, I'm showing the kind of the discussion forum post, because I think that's quite interesting, that those who are considering undertaking an MSc research project, once we had the mentors, there were just a lot more interactions on these discussion forums, and it wasn't sort of extra work for me. It was actually, I mean, the cohorts aren't exactly the same size, so but you could see from here that it's really the extra posts are coming from the mentors, and there's maybe a little time saving. Sometimes there's less of a need for a PMO to step in and say something, because an alumni already has. So again, this is what we were saying, like Alice, about the it's not necessarily an absolute clear boundary. Sometimes some of what you might put in a message as a PMO is the sort of stuff that an alumni mentor can say for you, so to speak, and they might go into much more authentic detail than we're able to as staff who haven't undertaken this project module, and then you're just chipping in with a few words. So also I think it'd be interesting not just to look at the number of posts like on this slide, but the content of them, because it might be that as staff we don't need to say quite as much even if we're trying to respond to each post. And so that's the left-hand figure. If you look on the right-hand side, I think once they registered, through the role modelling of the alumni mentors of supporting each other, I think that encouraged the students to support each other better as peers. If we compare across years here, so I've combined the mentors and staff together in purple. But what you see with the blue bars is a really big increase in the number of students posting. So I think this is evidence of, as best as we can get evidence on this, that the scheme encouraged that peer-to-peer support and increased student engagement as well in that way. The sort of feedback we've had from mentees has been very positive, that they like the wide range of skills offered to them by this group of mentors. And yeah, they like the authenticity that the students, these alumni, have been in their position before and succeeded. So they got some reassurance there. They get sort of the emotional support and also the expectation management and some practical tips as well. And likewise, the mentors, lots of positive feedback there as well. They like how it's developed their skills and their confidence. It's helped them maintain this link with an academic institution and be involved in a sort of broad range of public health topics. Yeah, so it's nice. And there's more. We've not sort of analysed all the data. This is sort of the early data, but we're getting more all the time. And the main conclusions, I'd say, is that, yeah, the mentees have found it very helpful and reassuring, and someone said it encouraged me to think more. The mentors say it's enriching, rewarding, exciting, and helps them remain connected to the academic world. And I've been asking the mentees quite a bit as well of, what's the added value of the mentors over just having PMOs? And that's where they talk very much about this authentic first-hand experiences and things that we as staff don't know. We have a second cohort running now, and we have interest for the third cohort so that we really sort of sustain this. And today we're talking very much about the transferability elsewhere. And that was picked up, actually. I've put a quote here because some of the feedback we got was they think, yeah, that the transferability is something that's could be really helpful here. And then I've mentioned, the extra analysis we're doing. The final focus group discussions will be in early 2020. So then we'll write things up more from there. So in terms of what I think is transferable, but I'm very much interested to get your feedback on this. So if you want to use the chat, and as Sarah's looking at the chat, and I can come back to the chat later, about what you're already doing in your own contexts with alumni, and from what I've talked about, are there things that you think could be relevant or adapted to your particular context? So, like the reassurance that I've given you that they're keen to voluntarily input into the programme, that they're a great asset to our students, that the mentees and the mentors really like this sort of group mentoring approach, mentees liking the diversity of it, both mentees and mentors being very positive about the scheme and what it gives them, and that it seems to be increasing participation and engagement among students, including in their own peer-to-peer support. I think the time investment, and I can say more about this later if people are interested, that there is some, it's been much heavier in terms of what I've done in setting it up and the research side, but I think there's ways we can streamline it, like by just having the Moodle discussion forums and the collaborate sessions and not thinking so much about the videos and written contributions, and remembering the sort of time-saving components as well, potentially if alumni have said what you would have said a little bit. I don't think much training is needed. We just run an hour's collaborate session. There is a bit of maintenance and induction element I'll talk about in a moment. I've not identified any major issues from monitoring. It's been reasonably, you know, easy to kind of sort out if there's been minor issues. And an unintended consequence, in a sense, was that we've ended up with more feedback as well, not just on the mentorship scheme, but it's really built up a good rapport between me and the alumni. I always feel sad that it didn't happen when they were students necessarily, but through the scheme, I'm getting rapport in a way where, and with the current mentees as part of the educational research project, where I'm linked in more with the students and the alumni. They're more ready to tell me more about the project module, rather than, you know, your standard student survey or they say whatever. They know that I'm going to be open to their feedback, and that I really want to know how to develop not just this scheme but the overall module. So that's been really good. And then there's this questions that's in the training materials. I'll show you where they are in a moment and where they will be, about if you did want to do some videos or even just help guide the alumni in what to post in their introductory message. You might want to use those questions yourselves, so they're sort of a transferable resource. So this main steps, if you want to do something like this, I would say there's 4 main steps here, and start about 3 months from when you actually want the mentors to be engaged with your students. So you need to recruit them. So at the London School, LSHTM, the alumni office are the data owners with regards to GDPR, and so we go via them. You know, we need to sort that out, and Naomi and Alice will be following up about that. But yeah, to kind of deal more with the recruiting side of things, you might at that point want to think about a grade cut-off. So initially I didn't set one, but this time round I've set sort of grade 3 and upwards out of our 5-point grade system. It's necessarily the most high, but maybe not those who've just scraped through a pass. But I also think in the way they self-select, it does tend to kind of work out okay, from what I've seen. So we have slides available to you that I'll show you if you want to adapt them for your training session. If you wanted to run a collaborate session, we record it, and then anyone who couldn't attend the session can watch the recording, and we do a doodle poll to try and get as many people there as possible for that. And for the second cohort, I included the first cohort of mentors in, so it's like the mentors then support the new mentors in that way, which has been quite good. I've talked about, so in the induction phase, so I should say the recruiting I started in mid-March, training I did in early May, induction throughout June. So now really as we get towards July, they're ready to go. And in the induction, that's where I talked about the need to really balance the kind of constructive feedback you give them with not undermining and, you know, making sure that you're helping empower them. And that's true in the maintenance phase. Lots of positive feedback and flagging messages to them, that sort of thing. So the transferable resources, I'm going to, just to make it easy for me, I'm going to whiz through the slides and then go up to that. But I'll show you in the Google Drive folder today, and Sarah says it'll also be up on the BLE website that she'll email, and easier to download from those. These 4 transferable resources. So there's the PowerPoint slides today are separate. There's 2 sets of PowerPoint slides. So there's today's that you've gone through, and then there's a longer set to use for training the alumni. There's a code of conduct, a 1-page code of conduct that we email to make it easier. They don't have to sign or anything complicated. They can just email back with a statement that you know of what they need to agree to. Which I need to add in actually. The email templates that I've used, I've tried to make them as generic as possible, except the code of conduct, but the other resources I've done my best to make them general. You'll see lots of asterisks where you replace with your own text, and an Excel template to try and keep track of, you know, who's signed up and if they've given consent to share their email addresses with each other and things like that. I've applied a Creative Commons license for these resources so you can adapt and use for non-commercial purposes, but please, you know, do acknowledge the source and let me know you're doing this, and anyway, it's good just to, if you email me, because I'd like to know if people are keen, and I'm happy to have Skype calls and in whatever way I can to get this transferred. Yeah, so the worries that people have are things that might go wrong. Things that I've seen that's gone a bit wrong are when mentors have used incorrect terminology to describe, like, you know, the roles of different members of staff or themselves, or they might have said advisor instead of supervisor, and it all gets a bit complicated. So, you know, sometimes I just have to remind them, because, you know, they've not done the course for a bit, you know, what we call different groups of people. There might have been changes to deadlines or procedures, and we can't necessarily update them on everything. I didn't feel there's necessarily that need to include all that in their training. So that's just something that I keep an eye on. And they have access to the new information for this year. The other thing they do, been trying to be so reassuring and supportive, is overstating their belief in the students sometimes. Oh, I'm sure you'll pass. So I've sort of, yeah, said be careful about that sort of thing, and added that into the training as well. That difficult line between giving advice and maybe misunderstanding what the student's saying. Other possible things that could go wrong to do with boundaries, which is murky. Lack of engagement. I think it sort of tends to be busier earlier on, and that's when the mentors perhaps have their most input from what I'm seeing. So yeah, working out what works best in your situation. You might not need them over such a long time frame, and again, that could save you time if you're not managing the situation over such a long time frame. If mentees become over dependent, but again, we can step in as staff in this sort of model. You know, inappropriate breaches of confidentiality, conflict of interest, or incompatibility. But I think some of those less of an issue for a group model. So before we do the discussion, if I just, I know I'm running low on time, but if I can just very quickly get back to sharing screen. Right, hopefully everyone can see this screen where Sarah's going to upload the different materials from today's session, and I'll just paste that link into the chat. Sorry about the infinite thing. And then there's, at the moment, if you want to download anything but quickly after this session, there's the sort of Google Drive folder. I'll paste that link in later. I'll just pop back in case it's something related to this. There is a better bit.ly link. So this is our Google Drive folder. There's 3 sets of PowerPoints, because there's Sarah's at the bottom. The one up from that is what I'm presenting at the moment. This is the training resource, you can right click and download, but it'll be easier once it's on the website. If I show you, like, say here, the code of conduct, you can get a sense of what that looks like. So this is the one that isn't generic, because otherwise it would just be full of risks and all sorts, but hopefully something that's useful. Yeah, so just about the different boundaries. And the email, I'll just show you the email templates, and then I'll stop with this. Because the email templates also got content, so you can see the different steps and the different email that you need to send to get this sorted. For those from LSHTM, there's a different bit that's easier for me to talk to you separately afterwards about how to get this set up. Actually, you need a group of alumni set up on Moodle, and just the technicalities of what they have access to, that relating to email 6 here. But hopefully that saves you lots of time, because you'll be able to just adapt what's there. So yeah, so then if I just go back to where I was with those slides, just to say thank you to you all, and thanks to the people who have made all this possible. Oh, There we go. Yeah, and there's been lots of people involved, as you see on this slide. Okay. So thank you. I'll hand back to Sarah for Q&A.
Hey, fantastic. Thanks so much, Anna. We've had loads of questions that have been trickling in as you've been speaking. So let's just move to this slide and we can have our Q&A. So if it works all right with everyone, I'll go through the questions that I've collected and then we'll see at the end if we've got any further. So Alex kicked this off asking about the time required. How time sensitive is it to set up such a scheme, Anna? Has it increased your workload as a program module organizer?
Yeah, I think that's probably a concern for a lot of people, you know, in taking something on. I would say my experience is bound to be a heavier workload than for somebody taking it on now, because I was running it as a research study and I was new to this type of research. So I spent a lot of time with ethics amendments. I was also the first person doing it at London School, so there was all these kind of just institutional barriers of trying to work out how to get this new group of alumni onto Moodle and legal things and all sorts. So I'm hopeful that I've ironed all that out so that it's easier for you. And also that, you know, if you do the streamlined version with the discussion forums and the collaborate sessions, then that will be less than, you know, doing all the videos and the written contributions. And there's yeah, so you've got the shared resources that have compiled. I hope that saves lots of work. I'd be interested to know if people do try it out. You let me know how long it takes. But I hope it's not too onerous. I really do hope it's something that's sustainable and transferable now, because I've really tried to whittle it down. And I think there are some gains, as I said, what alumni post, and you think, oh, especially when, like, you know, when I'm on annual leave for the weekends or something, sometimes the alumni step in quicker, and you think, oh, that's really nice. You know, it takes the pressure off me, and because it's just so, I just have to say, it's just really, really lovely. Like, I've really enjoyed working with the alumni. So for me, I felt like, you know, okay, a bit more of a time investment, but it's really enjoyable for me, and I can see the students are benefiting and the alumni are enjoying it. So it's just got a really good feel good factor to it. And yes, if you need to cut it down further, just thinking where maybe just having a few months where alumni are engaged rather than necessarily sustaining them for the whole academic year. If there's certain key points, like for some of our other modules at LSHTM, there might be like formative assessments. So during the FA phase, perhaps that's when to involve them in that discussion forum, or, you know, there might be a particular discussion or a particular time period that you might want to restrict to, or just to dip your toe in. But at the same time, a lot of the time it's to do with things like you know, the recruitment and the training. So in a way, if you are restricting it, you know, in terms of economies of scale or whatever it is, you know, I don't know. I think it'd be interesting to know what people think here and what you try out. So yeah, just like on this slide, just keep in touch and email me so we can try and make something happen and see. Yeah.
We've got quite a few more questions for you, Anna. If we don't have time, because we must finish at 11, if we don't have time to go through all the questions, then I'll make sure that you've got a copy of those, and you could, in the email follow-up, we can make sure that they will get answered, so no one will feel shortchanged. But Claire asked the questions about the conversations between mentors and students. Do you keep a record of these anywhere?
So everything's recorded automatically. The discussions that they're having on Moodle, so that's our VLE, so they're interacting, they're typing their messages up on the discussion forums for all the other students and mentors and the staff involved in supporting the module, so ourselves as PMOs, so we can see all that. So that's already a physical record of it all. Then in the collaborate sessions, they're recorded like this session. So if they're typing things in the chat, we can see all that interaction. And again, if they're using the microphone, it's recorded verbally. But is that? I wondered if that question had some question of if there a concern or anything.
So I can see that Claire is typing. Claire, if you've got a microphone, you're very welcome to enable that and ask. No, we're good.
And
You answered it.
can I answer Claire's other question where we're on, Claire, just about the matching? So I don't know if you missed that bit, but earlier I was saying, so because we're running a group mentorship approach, there's no matching. So the group of alumni who are recruited, we're saying they're a group of mentors and they support all the students collectively. So any student who posts a message on the discussion forum, any mentor, whoever's available or thinks they've got something to say, will just step and say something, and then all students can see it, so all students benefit. So we don't have those issues that you potentially get with the one-to-one mentoring. I mean, there's pros and cons with both, but yes, you don't have to spend the time-consuming part of the matching or deal with you know, any of the other issues like you know, if there's an issue with a relationship or the mentor needs to leave early and then you have to relocate. So we don't have that with a group mentorship model.
Actually, that follows on really nicely from a question that Phil asked, which is, have you experienced any issues between alumni and students that you've actually had to intervene in?
No, I would say that's generally a concern, so it comes from people saying it, and we've not been running it a long time, so perhaps that will happen at some point. But so far, so good, I would say in summary. And the one that I can remember like little things happening where we've been able to manage it, like the main one being students requesting to meet the alumni because they're in the same country, or one where they said, I think I know you. And so we just sort of stepped in and reminded them of the barriers within which we're operating, which I think is sometimes potentially frustrating, because I know that some might like the sort of one-to-one approach or something that isn't monitored, but I know, Alice, that you're setting something up potentially there as well. So I think we're then offering some complementary schemes. Yeah, but for us, it's sort of working well for our purposes to have a sort of monitored, protected kind of group mentoring approach, and that will be time saving for anyone trying to set this up as well.
Alison asked a question quite a while ago, which I think you've probably answered, which is around how mentors are trained and develop the role. I think you covered that when you talked about the training induction phases of planning. Is there anything else that you wanted to add about preparing mentors?
I think, yeah, probably that's fine for now. I want to make sure I've answered others. So, yeah. Oh, good. Thanks, Alison. Good to know.
Great. So just don't want to miss anybody out. Alex asked about the workload spread across the year with the scheme. Is it sort of, are there peaks and troughs where you're working really intensively, or how do you manage that workload spread?
Yeah, I think yes, there's definitely more to start with in getting them set up. So that initial 3 months of getting of recruiting them and training them and in sort of inducting them in a sense would be the heaviest time, I would say. And then it depends on your particular module. So for us with the project module, I think what I'm seeing from these 2 cohorts, or what I can glean, and the feedback is going to be most intensive over the summer, which in some ways is daunting for me because I'm not around much over the summer. But again, learning to let go and just monitoring, you know, checking. So I warn students, if I'm going to be on leave and not checking what alumni are saying, I'll just tell them that. And then when I'm back, I'll check what they've said and you know, clarify anything if needed in the meantime. But it's quite useful while I'm away that they're interacting. So the reason that's a busy period for us is because that's when our public health MSc students are wondering whether to take this project module option or not. And then when they're trying to develop their proposals, so really up until we get to November, they have to submit a proposal in November. So they need that hand-holding earlier on. And that interaction, and they really value it then. And then once they're new on the module and they're thinking about their ethics application, so it tends to be quite busy then. And then I feel like it sort of runs itself to a certain degree. You just got to send a few prompt messages. I mean, I say this very much with the size of the module that I've described as well. So about 77 students and 9 mentors, or 10 mentors, I think, this year. So that's kind of, you know, feels manageable. We don't get loads of messages. I mean, that's partly the issue. I'd rather students were posting more and making most of the alumni, and sometimes it's like the mentors are posting their messages and inviting the students, you know, they're really trying to drive it forward, and the students then get busy with exams and other things. So yeah, so I would say there's peaks and troughs, and just thinking about your own context there about what will work.
I think Diana's asked a really interesting question, which leads on quite nicely from this, which is about the sort of progression of your mentors. So she was saying in clinical trials, which is the department she works in, they hire excellent students as tutors. Do you think that mentors would want to take on the tutor role?
Ah, interesting. So by tutor, are you thinking, yeah, what are you thinking with tutors? Do you mean like it's,
Can I come in?
my head, do you mean external tutor contracts as staff, or have you got a microphone?
I'm using a microphone. Can you hear me?
Right. Yeah.
You hear me? Okay. Well, what we do is we look at our excellent students at the end of each year, looking at the exam board, and some of them we ask if they would wish to apply to be a tutor, an external tutor. And in clinical trials, because we've got no in-house MSc, we have a very high proportion of our tutors are actually external tutors. And some of our recruitment is through seeing them how well they do at the exam boards. And then, of course, if they're external tutors, they're paid. I don't know what the process is for your mentors. Do they get paid anything? And you know, it's a job. When they're tutors, they have a job. So is it sort of like any sort of volunteer situation? If you have volunteers doing pretty much the same work as tutors, then the volunteers feel a bit hard done by because they're not being paid. So,
yeah, it's a really interesting point, because yeah, this has come up quite a bit, and I've had different conversations, you know, on this very topic. And yeah, so they're not paid, they're volunteers. And yeah, so it's we don't get into right to work issues. They seem very happy to volunteer their time. Yeah, and yeah, I do wonder whether some, you know, would be interested, say on your MSc, they may well be interested in becoming an external tutor, but it would have a different feel to it. So some of them would like that and some of them wouldn't. I think a lot of them like the fact that I say you can leave at any time. You know, they don't want to let me down, but I say I understand, you know, this is something you're doing alongside trying to find work or whatever. So it's something that enhances their CV, their employability skills. You know, they've said it's really boosted their confidence, and you know, you've got that freedom. They're not signing a contract, although with the external contracts, you know, with the sort of external contracts I have at the school, there is that flexibility as well potentially. So yeah, I think it might be worth exploring that with some, but I think it's a different, I think it's a very different role, and it might appeal to different groups of people, and whether that's something that if they've already been a mentor and had, you know, if you wanted to run a mentorship scheme and do that, you know, they have be able to say that they'd been a mentor before being a tutor, whether that appeals. And I know from our on public health anyway, sometimes it's an issue whether they've got a PhD or not as well, so, and their level of experience, but perhaps that isn't required so much on for clinical trials, or there's different things. But I don't know if Alice, you want to say anything at this point. I know from speaking to the alumni office as well that I've felt the message that, you know, alumni want to volunteer and do things, and yes, we don't have to be overly concerned about worrying about if there's exploitation issues and things. And sometimes sorry, go ahead.
Well, one thing we're going to be doing over the next year more is like mapping all the volunteering that our alumni do, because they do a variety of different kinds. So as long as the role was different and distinct, and alumni weren't doing the kind of paid work of tutors, because if you had some people doing the same work as others who are paid and others who weren't, then you've got like kind of equal pay issues. But as long as it is a very different role, the boundaries are clear, and it's clear that it's volunteering, then, you know, we want to support more of it, and also better record on our database the mentoring and volunteering that is taking place already as well, so we can also do a good job of like thanking everyone and having some kind of perks and benefits for all of our alumni volunteers, and like looking at how we recognise them and stuff. So that's going to be a sort of big piece of work over the next year.
Thanks, Nancy. I was just thinking of something else as well. Was just that with the project model that I'm involved with, I think it's also like it's a distinct, you can see a distinction between the role the alumni mentors are playing and supervisors, because supervisors you know, a match to the student based on their discipline or their topic, and they're having Skype calls and taking responsibility for that individual student's MSc. I think there's also the distinction, but I think it's less clear in some ways, between, well, you know, it is clear, but I don't want to try and make out that there's absolute, you know, boundaries, that, you know, there isn't a little bit of flexibility. So you've got kind of the roles that we as staff play as PMOs, and we're responsible for making sure that the supervisors know what they're doing and the students know what they're doing, and managing those relationships between those one-to-ones, as well as responding to queries and the resources and all the other things, as well as responding to queries on the discussion forums. So responding to queries on the discussion forums is a small role within the PMO role, is what I'm trying to say. And that's the one where, you know, there's these time trade-offs in terms of what's posted on there. But the students, the alumni who are posting, are not taking responsibility for, you know, the guidance and the advice, because we're not asking them to do that. We're asking them to share their experiences, and they're covered, you know, their backs are covered because we as staff are covering them. So I think that's what makes it a clear enough distinction. But yeah, it's all early days with this, so I think we're just finding our way. And I think the thing with the payment that I did debate at one point, because I was trying to get funding to pay them, and there's also that point, I know myself from being a volunteer in another capacity, that sometimes you don't want payment, and it can almost be offensive, because it's not, you know, it might not be at the level, you know, some of these are very high level people, so in their careers, and really you want to feel like you're doing something rewarding sometimes, and that you're giving back. And so yes, it's sort of just kind of getting to know the mentors and what they're looking for, and checking in with them, you know, about that, and saying, don't give too much, you're a volunteer, so don't feel like you're giving too much. Yeah, and yeah, so just keep checking in with them, really, I'd say, on that one.
Anna, I think we've probably got time for maybe one more question, which came from Anne. She asked about if the completion rate of projects has increased since the scheme was introduced. So if you can actually see an impact of the mentoring scheme.
So increase in what? Sorry, the student engagement.
The rate of the projects which they're producing, has their completion rate increased?
Oh, the completion rate. I would say it would be too difficult to tell at this stage. I would say it's, I don't know if, yeah, because also we have the students who split across years. So we could look at things like deferral rates and completion rates, perhaps if we run this for a few more years, and maybe see it across other MSCs. I think it's a good question, but I think it's, yeah, too early. And of course, it would be very hard to know in terms of the cause and effect side. But yeah, it'd be an interesting thing to look at. Yeah, thanks.
And do you want to enable your mic and add anything to your question? No, she just said it's a bit early.
Yeah.
So we've only got about sort of 5 or so minutes left for the session, and one of the questions I had for attendees today is, what would you like us to do next? Anna and I have been having a chat about it, and we were thinking maybe, based on the sort of the knowledge that Anna has imparted, which we're very grateful for, thank you, Anna, maybe you'll apply some of this, and you might have a go at doing some mentoring yourself with your own cohort. So we thought perhaps we could run another webinar like this in 6 or 9 months, or even in a year, just to share practice and how we've been getting on. So we can also do, we can repeat the session, we can do other sessions. Is there anything that you would like us to do? If you have any ideas right now, feel free to put them into the chat, or else you can email me directly. My email address is on the website, and there's Anna's as well, so you can keep in touch with us that way. The other thing I was going to say is, of course, I will email across the links, the video recording to you. But if I don't have your email address, if you didn't register for the session today, just drop me a line to make sure that you don't miss out on that. Anna, is there anything else that you would like to add at this stage?
Just briefly, I think I saw another question from Anne about, you know, do we email all alumni? What we've done is do a 2-year separation between cohorts, just how it is on the project module. So students who started in 2017, yes, would support students starting in 2019. So we recruit from that year group. Yeah, hope that answers that.
Are there any other questions from anyone? Feel free to use the chat to drop those down. Jenny had a really wonderful question about comparing the approach of that you've run here with the sort of the more traditional face-to-face peer mentoring. I think that's probably a massive question. Maybe we don't have time to look at that one today. Alice had a quick one, which is about the hours that alumni commit to. Is there a kind of a ballpark time period that you give them, Anna?
Yeah, I mean, it's the question that a lot ask, and we haven't stated a number of hours because we've said it's very flexible. And again, with it not being a job, so we've said when the peaks are, and we've asked experienced mentors to answer this question to new mentors because they can really explain it better. And we say this, the only thing we say is there's 7 collaborate sessions, each for an hour, spread across the academic year, or maybe slightly longer than that. So that gives them some indication. They don't attend all normally because they're not available. We just doodle poll each. And aside from that, it's attending the initial training for an hour, and then on top of that, it's the discussion forum responses. So it just depends on how many students post, and we say that tends to be heavier over our summer and into the October. But we're not saying they have to do a certain number of posts, so it's sort of left up to them.
Super. Okay. We've got 4 minutes left for the session. Do you reckon you could touch on Jenny's question about the approaches between traditional peer-to-peer, face-to-face mentoring, one-to-one mentoring, and your group approach online?
Yeah, I mean, I think I found this really interesting because when we set up this scheme, I really thought that I was getting the impression from some that they didn't want this sort of monitored environment, because I think that you lose something in that informal emotional support and that closer relationship, and some are really calling from that. But the more we had these conversations, the more we ended up going towards actually let's just have it all protected. So, and they didn't want to change the model, so I was quite interested in that. On both sides, the mentors and the mentees wanted the kind of Moodle Collaborate group mentoring approach where they benefit from the protection of staff monitoring things, and also the diverse experiences offered by the different mentors, and that all students can benefit. Those who don't like to post a message but still like to read the interactions between students and alumni. And I talked as well about it's less time consuming to set up, and you don't get into the issues of having to reallocate when people leave, or there's an ill match in a relationship. And I think what I found interesting as well, you see this in the training slides, which there's a lot of them. You might just want to pull out the ones you think are useful to your context, but I've included them all in there. There's some links to some YouTube videos. If when you download, by the way, it says there's something up with a PowerPoint, just click to repair. It'll say it's removed some content, but I think it's okay. I think what it's done is remove the embedded code from the videos. So, but I asked the participants in the training to watch those videos, and then we discuss how relevant they are to a group mentorship model. So the videos themselves refer to one-to-one, face-to-face kind of style, traditional mentoring, but actually a lot of the key take-home messages about active listening, and so many. I mean, that's in the slides. I've got a slide of what my answers are, of what I thought. But yeah, I think there's so many parallels in terms of the skills that just sort of cut across.
Anna, you got through all those questions. I'm incredibly impressed. That's really great. And we have
great facilitation. Thank you, Sarah.
we still had a minute to spare, so I don't know if anyone had anything else that they would like to contribute, or any thoughts that have sprung to you as a result of today's session. Alice said it's been extremely helpful, so thank you for that feedback. If you have anything, as I said, any suggestions of other webinars you would like the Bleed to run for the consortium, then please do get in touch. We're really glad to have had you all here today, but more glad and thrilled to have had Anna joining us so she could share and impart everything she's been doing. in this
Thank you.
arena.
It's very
So thank
enjoyable for me as well. And I think, did we
Thank
talk about having a follow-on session to see how people are going? And
Yeah, absolutely. So we could talk. Let us know. Send us your feedback. Email us both or individually. Let us know what you think. But maybe we could run another webinar like this in 6 months or a year, just to get some feedback and hear more from our colleagues in Bloomsbury about who's doing what with mentors. The resources from today are on the link at the bottom of the screen, as you can see there, and they will eventually get posted onto our BLE website. So thank you all so much for joining us.
I just put that in the, I'm just putting it in the chat as well, but it's not the bit link, but yeah. So if you're doing the Google Drive, you right click on the resource and download. If you double click, it takes you to like Google Docs and all that sort of stuff. So right click on a resource and download, but then it should be on the other link soon, won't it, Sarah, with the website? That's a bit more easy, I think.
Absolutely. It'll go up on our website, hopefully by the end of this week. So thank you all very much and have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, please do email me. I really want to know if people are going to do this stuff. Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much, Sarah, and thank you everyone for joining.